Hey everybody, Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel, and this is the astrological weather forecast for the week of July 27th through August 2nd. And I'll do a monthly for August next week when I do the weekly, because there's a lot of stuff just this week alone that I'd like to touch base on in this one. So anyway, the big thing this week is one of our bigger background aspects that's been running this year is going to be exact for its second or retrograde hit, and the energy is all throughout the year in the background, but you can feel it a little bit stronger at times when the exact hits hit. So like most long term outer transits, there's going to be at least 3 hits. It's Jupiter, Sextile Neptune. Very sweet aspect usually. 2 planets that are very interested in spirituality, religion, philosophy, inspiration, values, things like that. And they're in a nice soft aspect, sextile, so that's a beneficial aspect, where opportunities will come for us to have that part of us appealed to. So our belief system, our spiritual beliefs, our religious beliefs, our values, things like that can get appealed to very easily during this time. And what's interesting about this, when you look at the position of the 2 planets, Jupiter, as we know, has been in Capricorn this year and will continue to be in Capricorn till about the end of the year. And as I've said over and over, very weak in Capricorn. So that can take some of that energy away and the beneficial parts of that energy. But interestingly enough, Neptune is in Pisces, where it's very strong. Actually, can't really be stronger. Neptune and Pisces have very similar energy. So I don't call it rulership when that Neptune rules Pisces. I actually believe that Jupiter is the ruler of Pisces, but Neptune is kind of like a co-ruler or has affinity to the energy of Pisces. So therefore, what's happening in this sextile is that because Neptune is not only strong in Pisces itself, but is in Jupiter's sign of Pisces, it's giving some of the energy back to Jupiter that the Capricorn kind of restricts in Jupiter. So it's almost like, here, receive some of this energy back of the real positive side of Jupiter. So to me, this sextile running in the background of our very difficult Saturn-Pluto conjunction this year, which, as I said many times, is the main aspect affecting us this year, helps like soften some of that blow, believe it or not. I mean, it really, to me, I see it doing is that I see a large contingent of people that are using this, what we called our downtime from the virus and from so many other, the economy slowing down, things like that, to get more in touch with their spiritual side, with their value system, with their philosophies of life, and focus on that. And I see a lot of people getting inspiration from that. So what Jupiter Neptune can feed is our imagination and our inspiration and our compassion for one another. So what we see is like, this big peace movement, nonviolent peace movement forming in reaction to a lot of the negative things going on, and that's the Jupiter Neptune at work, and on our individual level where we're getting our inspiration from right now, and where we're getting some kind of a spiritual relief or balm or solve to what's going on right now. So it's in effect, it's definitely softening a lot of this stuff. And also where you see it happening too is the compassion and empathy that people are having for one another. I think these negative times for a lot of people are pulling a lot of people together. So there's that too. Those are like really counteracting a lot of the very intense energy that Pluto Saturn Jupiter together are giving us this year. All these intense eclipses, the lots of retrogrades, Venus and both Mars retrograde this year, all that stuff, very intense, hard stuff to deal with. And this aspect running in the background gives like some balance back. So it's exact today on Monday for the second hit, and it's interesting because Venus is triggering it on this day too, where it's exactly square Neptune and quincunx Jupiter. Now, those are two aspects that are not, harmonious aspects. So when you sit there and think about, Venus square Neptune, usually what you see is like, Venus is the planet of what I would call like conditional love, and Neptune is the planet of unconditional love. So when they get together in an aspect, it kind of blends the two together, which is nice. The issue with the square, though, is that people can really let you down with a Venus-Neptune square once you realize you may have been looking at them through like rose-colored glasses, and then you realize they can't really reach the ideas of your Neptune, the idealism of your Neptune. People are people, they're a mix of energies, and they're not going to always be able to meet your desires or expectations of them. And that's what Venus Neptune can show us. And usually it can just be a little bit of discouragement. It really doesn't necessarily take away the desire to still make those connections and blend, but there is a realization that it's not going to be this perfect ideal. And in worst case scenarios, it actually can say to you, hey, you know what, this person in my life just don't blend at all, and it's just tension, and then I feel discouraged. So that it can at times indicate some separations and loss on that level. Now the quincunx to Jupiter is a little bit funny too. The two things about that, as it is, Jupiter, Neptune, and Venus are all kind of what I would call passive or lazy kind of planets when it comes to actually putting energy out and actually activating and moving. Jupiter, not necessarily all the time, but definitely all three of them would rather sit back on their laurels, let things come to them. And so like Venus, quincunx, Jupiter, that part of the Venus Jupiter energy can really be accelerated or brought up, and basically make us just feel very, very passive and lazy. And in the situation that many of us are in a lockdown situation, that it's almost like a natural outcoming of what that energy may be. But the other thing about that one too, and this is something for you to kind of just check in with yourself on, is sometimes with that one, when people can't meet our ideals, or we can't meet the ideals that we actually have in relationships ourselves, even where we fall short, Venus Jupiter can make in a quincunx can make us just like kind of lower our level a little bit, like kind of like not pay attention to what our value system is, or and therefore relate to people who maybe we normally wouldn't relate with as much, or at all even, or just like not take ourselves a step up, but kind of like take ourselves a step back in relationships into a place that's kind of passive again, where it's not like I'm trying to activate something that's a step up in relationships. I'm just kind of falling back into something that's more maybe comfortable, but it's still awkward because you know inside that's not really a satisfying place to be. So it's kind of interesting energy seeing that, you know, the way Venus is reacting to this week. And they're all exact on Monday too. In fact, Monday today is just really an odd day because you have those three energies going on, of that passive kind of energy, and then at the same time we have the third and final hit of Mercury square Mars. Now remember, and I think I brought this up before, when Mercury goes retrograde, you know, for the 2 or 3 weeks as it's going into the retrograde, it's making all kinds of aspects. And then when it retrogrades, it backs up and hits all those aspects again. So it went direct about, what was it, 10 days ago, even more now, a little bit more than that, right? Even 2 weeks ago. So it's right at the end of all the aspects that it initially made before it went retrograde, hit a second time when it went retrograde, and now it's come out the other side. So this is the third and final hit of Mercury square Mars, which is an ornery aspect. It really can get you into a lot of heated arguments with people, and your ego gets very involved too. So it's like just like heated. And then to add that, we have a Moon Uranus square today in a T square with the first quarter square of the Moon in Scorpio to the Sun in Leo. So we have like these really like deep, like intense emotions inside from the Moon Scorpio, yet the Sun in Leo wants to go out and play and have fun and express itself and be creative. But like that Moon Scorpio is brooding though. And then you have Uranus out on the other side that's basically going to react in a rebellious way in one direction or the other. Either the Sun's going to say like, screw you and you're brooding, or Scorpio's going to be like, you know, I am so tired of you being unrealistic about what's really going on. So it's a very interesting day, Monday. Just a lot of energy mixing up all over the place with that stuff. And then Mercury, besides the square to Mars, has a very, very interesting week going on. You know, it starts with the square to Mars today on Monday, and then it gets involved with Jupiter too, and Pluto after that. And so on Thursday, Mercury will be opposite Jupiter in that Jupiter Neptune sextile. So that, you know, Mercury with Jupiter is like, you know, just really feels good, has this really like optimistic attitude about really wanting to take things on. And the biggest danger about it is the optimism turns into arrogance and self-righteousness. So that is like really, you know, the biggest danger there. But it's really a good time to hammer out agreements with other people, although both planets are in signs that they're not really that comfortable with. So it's going to be a little bit slippery. You know, you know, Jupiter in the Cat, Mercury still in Cancer, where it's like, not really my favorite place to be. But like with the right attitude, you can definitely get agreements worked on. With the wrong attitude, you can end up with just like, arrogant arguing and disputing over things. So that's, and then by Saturday, Mercury aligns with Pluto and is opposite Pluto. So to me, at that point, Mercury's going to be like, oh, there was a lot of stuff that went on this week, and I really need to kind of contemplate all of this stuff. And it really is a time when you can see your subconscious reflected in your close relationships with others. So like, rather than, projecting that onto the other, it's really good to maybe open up a deep discussion of deeper issues between you and others, or just like to confront your own shadow that's being projected out onto that other. So, it really gives a deep interest once again in stuff like the occult and mysticism, and just getting to the bottom of things, like, just getting really deep into things. So like, so that's like another, Mercury's going to have an interesting week, going from like an ornery position to like an open, optimistic position to like reflecting on like what all that meant by next weekend and to you on like very deep levels. So an interesting week for Mercury. And then the last thing I really wanted to mention this week is the sun will have that, I said it's a T-square today with the moon square Uranus Monday with the sun, but the exact square of the sun to Uranus is next Sunday. And I think right now people are so agitated about what's going on a social level in the world. Next weekend could possibly be really explosive for rebellious kind of acts, and these protests going on and things like that. I think what may happen this week with that Mercury, Jupiter, Pluto is people are going to get some really big ideas about how they want to approach what they feel is, their rights being violated next weekend. And, we could have some really intense energy come up. And obviously we're all feeling that ourselves. I mean, it's on everybody's mind, the things going on right now. People feeling very strongly about authoritarian maneuvers and, their reactions to that. So like Sun Uranus is like, gonna just rebel against anything or anyone that you feel is restricting you, and just get really angry and possibly violent and just going with behaviors that are spur of the moment and like you could regret later, but like, just unpredictable basically, and always good, to be, when Uranus gets involved in tight aspects like this too, the world may see some natural disasters this week also. So, I mean, some really, intense energy there. Now, the sun is trine Chiron too this week. So, Chiron retrograde, but like that will also help feed the Jupiter, Neptune sextile of the compassion side of wanting to reach out and help others and give and receive that kind of like compassion and unconditional type love. So, really an interesting week, a lot going on. And, really like that Jupiter, Neptune keeping some balance with the negative stuff. But like Mercury, very busy, lots of decisions to make this week. And, just a lot of like a rebellious energy in the air too. All right, so that's this week, and for anyone who just wants the weekly, this is a good time to be like, okay, that's good, because I want to go through one other thing. A lot of people have been asking me, like, what is going on in the United States? Why is like everything so like, suddenly out of control? And I've gone through a lot of this, and I don't really want to try to mix in my political viewpoints too much, because that's when it becomes subjective, and astrology really doesn't have judgment on this stuff. It really is us making decisions individually and collectively with the energy that astrology is out there with, and then the results of that. But basically what we're going through is our collective karma as a country, and there's no question about that. Now, one thing that's interesting in astrology, just like any other profession, there's different subgroups within astrology that study different things and have different opinions on how different things work. And in mundane astrology, which is the astrology of politics in the world history, each country has a birth chart. But sometimes it's not exactly agreed upon by all astrologers which birth chart is actually the valid birth chart. And sometimes countries even have multiple birth charts, because if a new form of government comes in and it changes the whole way the country is, it really is almost like a rebirth of the country. So the United States, on July 4th, we celebrate the United States birthday. And I know some people don't even know what July 4th is about anymore, which to me is just mind-boggling. That, if you don't realize that July 4th was when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, that declared our independence from Great Britain. I mean, I don't know what you were doing in school if you don't understand that, but apparently a lot of people don't. But my point is, July 4th, 1776, in the psyche of our nation, is our birthday. So to me, right away, and to many other astrologers too, if your birth chart for the United States is not on July 4th, 1776, it's hard to accept that, because that's what the whole nation believes and celebrates, that it's its birthday. So even if the Declaration of Independence was signed the next day or some other day that week or whatever, psychologically, the nation believes it was born that day. And so the chart I use is one of the most common charts for the U.S. It's called the Sibley chart, and it has 12 degrees Sagittarius, 13 degrees Sagittarius as the ascendant. And that really makes a lot of sense to me for the United States. I see the United States as a very Sagittarian personality on the world stage. It's a country that believes it's right. It's very driven by its own religious beliefs and manifests destiny. If there was two words that describe the United States attitude since the day it was born, it's manifest destiny, and that's so Sagittarian. So, that being said, here's a chart here of, it's actually a bi-wheel, but the inner wheel here, this is the United States. Sag rising, Cancer Sun, Cancer Venus, Cancer Jupiter, Mars and Gemini, all in the 7th house, Moon in Aquarius. So, the outer wheel is basically, not including the moon, is basically where most of the planets are today, and the houses that they're falling in. And when I do anybody's transits, or look at any predictive kind of work, one of the things I do is I work in a rule of 3. Like, if you see some energy in astrology once, you're like, okay, that's a possibility. If you see it twice, you're like, oh, that's a stronger possibility. If you see it 3 times, then you're like, there's no doubt that this is what's going on. Okay? In this chart that I just looked at, really, briefly lined up, and I had so many people asking me, I saw 6 things that are so majorly stressful that, show a lot of what the United States is going through. And a lot of people may be aware, you'll see Pluto right here. Pluto, 23 degrees Capricorn, I'm sorry. And this is the Pluto of the United States at 28 degrees Capricorn. So what does that mean? That means that when the United States was born, Pluto was here. And since then, Pluto has gone all the way around the chart and is almost back to where it was when the United States was born. Now, you all know what your Saturn return is, or most of you do when you're about 29, 30. This is the Pluto return. We don't ever get to live a Pluto return as people, because Pluto has a 248-year orbit. We don't even get to live a Pluto opposition. We get to live a Pluto square, and that's a very stressful time for most people when they have their Pluto square. The Pluto return is what a lot of people have been talking about, why they think the United States may not survive as a country or in the current form of government that it's been for 200 and almost 50 years. Because every country that goes through a Pluto return usually has a complete collapse of their form of government at that point, and if they survive it, a new form of government takes over. So like this is going to be exact in 2023. We're obviously already an aspect to that, and that's the thing that a lot of astrologers are talking about. But look, to me, when I look at this even right now, it's like, okay, so look at where this Pluto is right now. You know, it's like, okay, you know, it's like sitting right here in the second house with Saturn and Jupiter. So our conjunction of the Capricorn planets are in the second house of our assets, personal resources as a country. And what is being stressed out right now for everybody is this economic shutdown because of the virus. So there that is. And look at what it's doing. Exactly opposite the USA Mercury. Oh, by the way, the USA Mercury is retrograde in the chart. All this stuff that we're hearing from the government, all this confusing, conflicting information about the virus, about the protests, about global climate, everything, you name it. There's two sides at least to everything. There it is. Pluto opposite Mercury retrograde. Messages that are just lost, gone, you know, that are purposely being misled. Propaganda, Pluto, propaganda, coercion, okay? So that's what we got going on right now. An exact Pluto opposite our country's Mercury retrograde. How fitting, huh? And then to top that off, we talked about how the South Node was in Sagittarius, North Node in Gemini, and I talked about how people's old belief systems are what's holding them back. South Node, transiting through the first house of the U.S. That's our country together, the first house. It's our value systems that are holding us back right now. And the karma attached to them. Two things, right? Saturn, transiting Saturn, right, is conjunct our Pluto, U.S. Pluto this year. What's the main aspect of this year that I talked about all year? Pluto conjunct Saturn. What's going on in the U.S. chart? Saturn conjunct Pluto. Same energy. The whole system of the U.S. is being exposed for the ugly parts of it that don't work. Right here. Same exact aspect that's going on for the planet is going on for the United States. How karmic is that? Wow, that's 3. We've already got 3. The rule of 3. Let's go to 4. Mars conjunct Chiron in the 4th house. The land and the people with a big disease, keeping them stuck at home. Wow, 4. Uranus in the 5th house of entertainment and sports. Right now, they announced today that one of the baseball teams that tried to start playing baseball again this weekend, already half the players have the virus. Entertainment and sports, totally upset. thrown out. And not only is Uranus in the fifth, it's exactly square the United States South and North nodes. The South node in the second house of money and resources. Where does all the US's money get generated? Basically, through service for sports and entertainment. Not anymore. Time to find a new way to do it. I'm gonna have to keep printing money. 5, 6, 6. We've got double 3. Transiting Neptune opposite the US Neptune. Your value system has led you astray. Now, I know I'm starting to sound subjective and political. You could have turned it off 10 minutes ago. 6 issues. We are a nation together. We created this together. We're responsible for this together. We are at a turning point in our history. Where this is going to go is very hard to say right now. The energy is similar to pre-World War II, when fascism and nationalism took over and led the world to a war. Jupiter and Neptune's like, you guys could all come together if you combine compassion and understanding and give that to everybody. We're all going over the cliff together one way or another. So like either we get a parachute together or it's going to be a rough landing. And the United States is right in the middle of this karma. And guess what? I looked at China's chart. Same stuff going on for them. Haven't looked at Russia yet, but my feeling is they'd probably be under a lot of stress too. So, people have asked me what's going on in the United States. Why has it gotten this crazy? Because it's supposed to be. And we've all making the wrong choices collectively, and we are continuing to do so. And if we continue to do so, when the Pluto return hits exact in another year or two, there's no telling what it could look like. And this year may actually end up being an easier year. Now, I know I'm sounding like I'm on a pulpit now. And people have been asking me, being realistic about this, trying not to get my own political views involved. This is what happens to every country in a Pluto return. Rome survived 3 of them, but each time it happened, the government completely was overthrown and changed. This is where we're at in history. Like I told you guys last week, this is the birth of the age of Aquarius. Births are not sloppy, they're violent, they're bloody. Lives sometimes are lost. We have some serious decisions to make. North Node of the US in the 7th house of our allies. But we're too proud to even ask other countries right now what the right thing to do or to follow their examples. We've got ourselves in a really hard position right now as a country. We have some very hard decisions to make. This next 10 years, the energy's not going to let up. The birth of this age is happening, and you are a part of it. Unless you decide to check out, you're a part of it. What are you going to do with it? This is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm available for all kinds of readings. I would love to help you out. My email is matthue823@gmail.com. No, the reading's not free. We can talk costs. I never turn anyone down. Until next week, when we'll look at the month of August, and we'll look at the weekly too. This is the Astrological Winds channel signing off. Look out what really moves you and inspires you. Spread that out to the people around you. The change has to start from the bottom up, or it's not going to be a stable change. Namaste.